Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all here in this session at TNV Academy. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our eminent speaker, Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman today, who is going to talk to us about integrated management system. In this webinar today, Mr. Sitaraman will discuss this topic in detail, along with some real-life examples he has experienced in the industry. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman, has done his post-graduation in chemistry from Annamalai University. He is also a lead auditor in 9001, 14001, and 45001 standards. He has an industrial experience of around 30 plus years in various industries ranging from primary and secondary batteries, non-ferrous alloys, lamp components, and manufacturing in India, South Africa, and Sultanate of Oman. He has been imparting training to a number of organizations, entrepreneurs, and individuals on various topics related to ISO terminologies and their certification and implementation. It was just a brief introduction of our guest speaker today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman. I may request Mr. Sitaraman now to please start the session on integrated management systems.
Very good afternoon to all of you present here in this webinar, and thank you to TNU Academy and Mr. Apur for introducing me to this webinar participants. Okay, and I will be taking the topic today, integration of management systems. Okay, so before going into that, I just want to tell you that around 40 to 45 minutes I will be taking the session, and at the end of the session we'll be opening for questions. So anybody has got any queries, any doubts, you can get clarified at the end of the session. Okay. So let's start with the session. I have made it into three parts now. First, we will talk about the need for IMS, why we need to have an integrated management system. And then we will talk about in the next session, how to integrate management systems, whatever management system organization wants to integrate, how to do that. And then at the end of it, we will have the question and answer session, and we will start with this. So first of all, we need to know why we need IMS in an organization. Okay. So to understand that, we just need to know what are all the ISO standards available for certification. So that is very important to understand. First and foremost, we know the 9000, which is not a certifiable standard. It is only a fundamentals and vocabulary, which gives a lot of terms and definitions, meanings of whatever words ISO has used in ISO 9001 series of standards. Okay, so that is only for reference purpose. So then comes the ISO 9001, 2015. That's a certifiable standard because the title says quality management system standard requirements. So wherever you see the word requirement, that standard can be certifiable by auditing the management system. Okay. Then comes 9004. It's released in 2018. It's again guidelines for performance improvements, how to make excellence after achieving 9001, what all we can do to improve our management system further. So those guidelines are given. Again, it's not a certifiable standard. Okay. So now there is another standard, ISO 22301, 2019 it was issued. It is business continuity management system requirements. Again, there is a requirement here. So naturally we can get it certified. That is ISO 22301. So it was released in 2019. Then 14001, which is very familiar standard after 9001 was implemented. This standard is very popular. That is environmental management system standard requirements. This also can be certified because the requirements is there. 17025 released in 2017, competency requirements for testing and calibration laboratories. So people who are testing and they are involved in the field of calibration, they go for the certification and there are requirements associated with that. So this also can be certified. Again, ISO 22001, latest version is 2018. It's a food safety management system standard requirements. Again, food industries, people manufacturing, processing industries which are making foods, they will be going for this certification. Then 27001, 2018, information safety management system is mainly for IT organizations and people who are handling a lot of sensitive data. Those organizations will go for information security management system. This also can go for integration. Then ISO 45001, very recently introduced. It was earlier OSHA's 18001 that has been upgraded, and ISO has taken over that standard. So it's a family of ISO standard now. That's for occupational health and safety management system standard requirements. So this also a certifiable standard. Then ISO 50001, as energy management system standard requirements. So this standard also can be certified because there are requirements associated with energy efficiency, how organization is improving the energy performance. So now if you see all these standards, earlier 1987 we had ISO 9001 and 35 years of this 9001 is there. Then slowly one by one organizations are implementing other management systems based on their needs and expectations from interested parties. So basically they need to see how we can integrate these standards. So now if you see 9001 quality management system that can be integrated, as well as energy, environmental management system 14001, as well as 45001 2018. These are the three standards. Almost 90% of the organizations, when they go for integration, they integrate these three standards and make a integrated management system. Okay, and then some other organizations are also having this information safety management system as well as energy management system. They also can be integrated into the integrated management system. So the beauty of it is now it is possible to integrate. Why it's possible, we will understand now. Okay, so now we say why we need to integrate management system. You see what happened when originally only one standard, which was certified quality management system, it was okay. But then when organizations started to implement more and more standards, so they had to go for certification. So that time they found it difficult to implement all of them together. It's having different kind of document structure, different standard requirements. So it was not possible for organization to integrate easily. So it was basically a kind of representation given to ISO about this kind of standards which are not standards among themselves. There was no standard for standard. So ISO listened to the customer organizations like various companies going for this certification. They said we need to have a kind of structure which is conducive for organizations to integrate their management systems. So it is suitable for organizations who have already implemented a management system. When they go for more than one, then the structure of the standard should be conducive enough to integrate these management systems. So that was one of the requirements which the customer organizations placed on ISO. So ISO listened to these kind of representations, and they wanted to do something about it. Organizations contemplating the introduction of other systems in the mix. So for them, it was difficult because every standard has got a different class structure, because the standards are developed by technical committees and there are different technical committees making these standards. So though the standards have got a technical expertise, but when you want to combine the standard, there was no uniformity. There was no standard for standards. So that was a problem ISO felt, and they wanted to address this situation. Because of this different structure, it was difficult to maintain multiple manuals, because every standard required a different class structure. So they had to make a separate documentation, and then they had to maintain manuals associated with that. And also too many audits and wastage of time and resources. For every standard certification, there was a separate audit, and there was a lot of man hours spent, and then a lot of cost also was involved, and people were getting kind of wary of various audits, because then it puts a lot of pressure on the employees when there are too many audits happening. So they also lose focus on their job. So these were the problems which the customer organizations placed on ISO to resolve. So what they did, they come up with a Annex SL high level structure directive. This directive was given to all the technical committees who are developing standards. Like for example, when you want to tell a story to a child, normally how do you start a story? You always say once upon a time. That means the child knows the story is going to start, because that's a very common way of starting. Same way, when you end the story, you always say they lived happily ever after. So if you want to give a positive vibe to the child, so we always end the story with a happy ending, and also we give a moral to that. So this is how a story is told. Same way, I also wanted to make it very simple for the technical committees who are developing standards by giving a Annex SL high level structure. So what is this high level structure? It has got a identical core text. So when you look at standards implemented from 2013 onwards, you will see all the standards are looking very, very similar because of the identical core text and common terms and definitions. This is a very fundamental bedrock of this Annex SL high level structure. And then the clauses are like this. The clause 1 scope, then clause 2 is normative references, clause 3 is terms and definitions for individual management systems, and then clause 4 is context of the organization. Then clause 5 is leadership, which is common for all the standards except for ISO 45001. They wanted to stress the importance of workers' participation in the management system, because without their participation, the standard implementation will not be successful. So they made it mandatory to include worker participation along with the leadership, hand in hand. They have to be present for the implementation of the standard. That's why worker participation was included. Otherwise, leadership commitment is always there in all the management systems. Then clause 6 is about planning, how to address the risk and opportunities. Clause 7 is putting the support structure in place for implementing and maintaining the standard. And then clause 8 is for operation, how to go about implementing and doing the activities. That was the thing. And clause 9 is checking, performance evaluation. And finally, clause 10 is improvement. Now, if you see, there are clause 4 to clause 10, there are 7 clauses, which are basically requirements every organization has to undergo and implement before going for certification. So now this Annex SL high-level structure made it possible for organizations to implement more than one management system, because this structure is similar from every standard. So that is the beauty of this integrated management system, which is easy to implement because there is a Annex SL high-level structure available. Also, another thing which is underlying in all the management systems is the process approach, otherwise called plan, do, check, act in integrated management system. So what does it entail? So whenever you want to do implement any standard, you need to have a proper planning in place. So you spend a lot of time in planning, your execution of the system implementation will go very smooth. That's why they put the planning upfront, and they spent a lot of time in that. What all things we need to consider before implementation, all those things are taken into account in this. So today's session, I'll be talking about the main 3 systems which are being integrated across organizations, which are quality, environment, and occupational health and safety. So I have also color coded my presentation. Wherever it is red, you need to understand it is for occupational health and safety, and where it is green, it is for environmental management system. So other things are common across, so that is left as it is. Okay, so in the planning stage, if you see, we need to have a policy which will be the guiding force for the organization, and the policy has to include elements of all the management systems. So that's why it's called integrated management system policy. So which will have quality elements, what all required as per the standard, then also have environment, occupational health and safety, and if you have any other standard implemented like energy efficiency or information security, all those elements have to be included in the policy, because that is going to be signed by the top management, the guiding force for the organization in implementing the integrated management system. And also external internal issues across all the management systems is common, so we need to understand before we go ahead and implementing. Another thing which is important is consultation and participation of workers. So that is specific to ISO 45001. So that also has to be considered. How do we put structures and mechanisms in place for involving workers in the implementation of this occupational health and safety management system? Risk and opportunity assessment, that is common across all the standards. Aspects specifically for environmental management system, what all activities organization is doing, what is the impact in the environment. So we need to assess that. That's why the aspects have to be included. Then hazards identification and risk assessment, and as well as risk control. This is mainly aimed at occupational health and safety management system. What all hazards are available in their day-to-day activities, and how do we assess the risk of coming out of it, and how do we control them? That is very important. So see, these all things are going in the planning. Also, we need to understand the legal requirements applicable for the organization for which they have to comply. So that upfront we need to know, then only we can put in systems in place to ensure compliance. And finally, objectives and targets. So when I have a policy, I need to have objectives and targets to meet the policy requirement signed by the top management. So every department, every person in the organization need to have a kind of objectives and targets, so that when they work together as a unison team, the achievement is achieved of the policy. So that is what is going in the planning. So now you come and execute the planning, where you have to put in the structure and relevant responsibilities, accountabilities, everything has to be given for everyone in the organization. And then we have to train people, again awareness, and also make them competent to implement the management system at various levels, and documentation to support instructions, procedures, everything has to be there. And finally, operational control, what all things we should do so that the system can be maintained and continuously improved. So for which we need to have operational controls. When it comes to occupational health and safety management system, we need to have elimination of hazards and minimizing risk should be the priority, so that we can prevent injury and illness to the employees working in the organization, for which we have to identify all the hazards and eliminate them and minimize the risk. We cannot eliminate risk, always the risk will be there, but as far as for practicable, we have to minimize the risk. And also for both environment as well as occupational health and safety, we need to have an emergency preparedness and response. In case of any emergency, how are we going to prevent this kind of things happening, and how do we respond to such emergencies? We train our employees so that they are prepared for a real emergency. Okay, so these are all going into the doing part. Then whether we are doing as per plan or not, we have to check. Either you can check or you can also study, because earlier when the PDCA was introduced, originally it was called PDSA, means plan, do, study, and then act, or whatever we need to do their action. Okay, so here check or study, what we do performance monitoring and measurement. What all things we have to parameters we have to monitor, what all we have to measure using the right instruments, we have to do those things. And also we have to see what are all the compliance obligations from environmental management point of view. It is nothing but legal and other requirements, but the word used in the standard is compliance obligations in ISO 14000. So we have to look at what are all the compliance obligations organizations have got, and also legal and other requirements from other standard like occupational health and safety or energy management, whatever standards, they also have legal and other requirements. Then corrective action. So these are also to be done. Suppose if you see any problem, we need to do course correction. That is very important. And then records management, because when you do monitoring, it's very important to retain those documented information. That's what we call records, and manage those records so that they are preserved properly. And then we also do audits to ensure that system is effective and implemented very effectively. So that is why internal external audits means basically external certification audits, surveillance audits, as well as internal audits happening in the organization. So these are all the checking mechanism to see that we are following the plan. And if there is any deviation, naturally they have to act or adjust, means course correction. So that is very important. So whenever we see deviations from the plan, we need to make course correction so that next time we do not have the same problem or same mistake happening. So that's why when you see mistakes, we have to learn from mistakes and correct ourselves by doing corrective action, and then we eliminate those mistakes so that we are actually improving. So that's why we call action towards improvement or adjusting our path so that we are in the right path towards our achieving our objective. So this is all done by the management. So that's a management review is done there. And then finally we have a cycle. This cycle is a cyclical approach. This PDCA is always done in cycle. So every time it is done, and with the support of top management across all the aspects of PDCA, plan, do, check, act. That's why they are in the center of this, and because they are involved, things are happening in a proper place. So the commitment from top management, right from signing the policy statement and across the PDCA cycle, they have to be involved so that we can see the realization of this involvement, how we see the improvements happening in the organization. So we call it integrated management system performance improvement. So if it is quality, environment, and occupational health and safety, across all the management system standards, there should be improvement in the customer satisfaction, improvement in the way we are controlling our pollution, reduce, reuse, recycle of materials, and also how do we prevent injuries and illness to the workers in the organization. So these are all going towards having IMS performance improvement. So you see here the PDCA cycle, every time we have a cycle, there is an improvement because we are eliminating mistakes, and then the standard is acting as a wedge which is supporting the improvement. It doesn't go slide down backwards. So that is very important. So every time we do the PDCA cycle, there is a scope of improvement happening, and then the standard is acting as a wedge which is preventing the improvements from sliding down. So that is what we call continual improvement. We need to understand that. Okay, so this is why the PDCA cycle is very important. Now you see these standards, whatever we talked about, you can see the standard structure itself is conducive for plan, do, check, act, PDCA. Now you see I have not considered 1, 2, 3 in the clauses because they are not requirements. So our requirement starts from clause 4 of the standard and ends in clause 10 of the standard. So you see the 4, 5, 6, 7, all these 4 clauses, we are doing a lot of planning for a smooth execution, which happens in one clause, which is operation. Then checking whether we have done right as per plan is done in the performance evaluation, and that is where we have got these internal audits and management review, everything. And in action part is towards improvement for the next cycle. So that is whenever we find any problem, we have to do root cause analysis and eliminate them. That's why non-conformity and corrective action is here, and continual improvement. So when you do this PDCA cycle, naturally it is bound to be giving improvements in various tiers of the organization. So this is a PDCA in 9001. If you look at 14,001, because of the beauty of Annex SL high level structure, all the standards are looking very similar, so that organizations are happy to implement integrated management system and implement this easily, because the system is conducive for that. So that is very important. Here also you have got 4, 5, 6, which is involved in planning. Then the do is basically support and operation. Basically 7, clause 7 is having both plan and do, because you have to employ people and they will be performing the job. So when you want to employ, that is involved in the planning. When the people are performing, that is going into the doing part. So that's why this clause 7 is having both 50-50 of planning and doing. And then checking again, same way like 9001. Here also we have got these internal audits, management review, monitoring, measurement, all are there. So this is very easy for organizations to follow and understand, and implementation becomes very easy. And then action is towards improvement, where we find our mistakes and do corrective action, and then we are on the path of improvement. So this we saw in the 14,001 standard, which is environmental management system. Now coming to occupational health and safety. Again, we have got this PDCA in place here. Again, 4, 5, 6, 7. These 4 clauses are involved in planning, and then execution happens in one clause, which is doing operation. Then we have checking whether we have done right or not, and action. So you see all the 3 standards we have seen so far, the PDCA is also applicable, and the structure also is very looking very similar. So it is easy for organization to implement. Lastly, I am to talk about the PDCA in ISO 50001. Here also you see the PDCA is very much evident. 4, 5, 6 involved in planning. As I said, the 7 is having a 50-50, so we can either consider it in planning or in doing, but basically it is having both the parameters involved in that. And then we have a checking and action. So now you can see all these 4 standards are conducive to integrated management system, because they have the PDCA cycle and they are following the high level structure. So any standard which was released after 2013 has got this similar structure, because ISO made a directive to all the technical committees. They should follow this structure while implementing the new standards, whatever they are writing from their technical committees. So that's why we have got this thing. So ISO listened to the customer organization and implemented this, which is very useful for all organizations to implement. So now we will see how to integrate the management systems. So this is very important. First, we understand why we need IMS, because more than one standard is being implemented. So it's difficult for organizations to follow. So there we need to have an integrated management system, for which the standard has to be conducive enough to do that. So that is why we saw that. Now we are coming to the common and distinct elements of IMS. We need to understand, so that what all things common we can do it together, and what all things specific to individual management systems we can address them separately and then tie them up together. First, let us see the common clauses. The scope of the management system, which is basically common, talking about individual management system, but every standard has got a scope, which is a standard scope, I would call it. Then normative references, like what all standards they referred while writing the standard. So that is also common to all the standards. So we just put relevant information under that core text. Then terms and definitions, some of them are common, but some of them are very specific to individual management system. So there we can address them, but the clause is dedicated for terms and definitions. So all the technical committees were putting the information relevant to that under that particular clause. Then clause 4 is called COTO, or context of the organization, which is also very important. When you want to implement a system across the organization, we need to look at what are all the internal external issues, needs and expectations of interested parties, and what is the scope we are going to have for the management system implemented in the organization. So, and then what are all the processes we need to have for effective implementation of the system. So these are all addressed in the clause 4. So that is very much common to all the standards. So leadership and commitment, we already saw leadership is involved right from plan, do, check, act, and they also sign the policy. So they put the commitment by signing the policy, and they are involved in everything. So they are also common. There will be one top management, whether you implement environment management system or occupational health and safety or quality or energy, top management will not change. So that's why that also has come under the common clause. Then actions to address risk and opportunity. There is risk everywhere. We need to understand them and then mitigate them so that it doesn't become a problem for the organization or a business risk and it consumes the organization. So we don't allow it to happen. That's why we need to risk. What is the risk from environment point of view? What is the risk from safety point of view? And also what is the business risk and process risk? All this is addressed. So that's why that is also common here. Then 7, support is of all the clauses, I would say the support is very, very similar across all the standards. So that is very important because it talks about resources, competence, training, and documentation, communication. These are all very, very important for all the standards. So that is why support is common for all the standards towards effective implementation. Then performance evaluation is also when you want to implement something, you want to check whether you have done as per plan. So that also becomes very important, and that's why it's in the common clause. Then improvement. Everywhere we are stressing improvement, whether it is improvement in your environment performance or improvement in the safety in the occupational health and safety in the organization, or improvement in customer satisfaction, or improving your compliance levels regarding legal requirements. Always we have to see improvement. If you do not improve, we will not be relevant in the industry. So that's why it becomes very important for us. So that is also addressed in common. So now looking at what is specifically to be looked at, distinct elements. So if I see that, first let us see what is in QMS. In QMS, we are talking about in clause 6 planning of changes. That means when organization is implementing in changes, because changes have to be there in the organization towards improvement. If you don't change, you will not be relevant. That's why change is constant. We have to say that constantly you have to change, adapt to the circumstances, adapt to the new markets, new scenario. That's why change is important in the organization. So how do you plan the change so that all the stakeholders are informed about it and they are aware of the changes so that implementation becomes smooth and there is no surprises in the end. So that's why it is very important specifically for the quality management system. We have addressed that. Then customer requirements. So when you talk about quality management system, customer is the important person there. It's one of the main interested parties. So their requirements and fulfilling them is very important. That's why we have to understand the customer, what the customer wants, and then review the requirements. So that's why it is specific to quality management system. Nowhere else we talk about customer except quality management system. Then design and development. Some organizations may be doing design and development basically as per customer requirements or as per standard requirement. They may be developing some products and they may be having a proper design and development functioning in the organization. So that will be mainly for quality management because it talks about the product and service. So when it comes to that, design and development is coming under quality management system. Some organizations it may not be applicable because they may be following whatever customer gives, they just make that and give. So the design may be with the customer, they may not be doing it, or they may be making standard products like a battery, for example, or any other standard product which has got a Bureau of Indian standard, like ISI standard is there. You follow that specification, then you don't need to do design and development. So that is why it is some organizations will go for it, some organization may not be applicable. So they will state it in the upfront in the scope, and then they have a proper justification towards that. Then 8.4 supplier evaluation. Almost 75% of the time it's related to quality management, but also I would say some cases where you are engaging some outsourced contractor, whether he's following the proper safety in the organization. So some extent we have to evaluate our suppliers for the occupational health and safety management also, as well as environmental management system. When you want to appoint new suppliers, you want to be sure that their environmental performance is good, they do kind of recycling, and also that the life cycle perspective, you consider their importance also. So but majority of the time supplier evaluation is mainly going to quality management system. Then production and service provision, where you are actually doing the product realization, that is specific to quality management. So these classes are not available in any other management system. Release a product, again, once you've done the product realization, you have to release the product to customers. So that also has specific requirements. So that comes under again quality management system. Then control of non-conforming output. So when you are doing some product realization or service realization, there may be something which is going beyond your plan and it is not as per the plan. So something deviation will be there, which you need to control. We call it non-conforming output. Whether it is a product or service, it is considered as non-conforming output. We have to control them so that the good product and bad product service doesn't get mixed up and create more confusion. So controlling is important. Then customer satisfaction, specifically we have to evaluate under performance evaluation for quality management system. And whenever there is a non-conformance found under 8.7, we talked about, the corrective action is implemented in clause 10.2 under the quality management system. So now you see, these are all very specific to quality management system. We need to have a systems, procedures in place to address these requirements. So that's why I have put it together separately. Now comes environmental management system. What are the specifically we need to understand? So these are the things for environmental management system. Again, under planning to address risk and opportunities, or actions to address risk and opportunities, what is the risk to environment from the organization's activities and processes? So what is the kind of interaction they have on the environment? When I say environment, water, air, land, these are the interacting environment with the organization's activities. So that's why we have a aspect and impact assessment. So that is very specific to environmental management system. So from that we will understand what are our significant aspects, how do we control them, that means the risk to the environment, how are we mitigating. So that is why specific to environmental management system we have addressed that. Then operation control. So when we do operation like in the production and service provision, what are all the things we have to consider from the environmental management point of view? That means how do we reduce, how do we reuse, how do we recycle our materials so that environment is not polluted. So that is why operational control will talk about waste control, waste minimization, and waste to wealth, means recycling of waste. All those things are talked about under that. 8.2 specifically addresses emergency response. Suppose any incident happens, spillage or major mishap has happened. So what can be the environmental consequences? So we need to understand that. That's why we conduct a lot of exercises simulating these kind of emergencies, potential emergencies, and understand our response and do corrective action so that we do not face any real problem when the emergency is struck. So that's why emergency response is also addressed here. Then 9.1 under that clause, compliance obligations. That means what are all the legal requirements which organizations to fulfill from environmental management system point of view. So the word compliance obligation is very specific to ISO 14001. It is nothing but legal and other requirements. So we need to understand so that we can comply with them properly. Then any incident, like I told about the spill incident, irrespective of whatever you may do in emergency preparedness and response, sometimes it will be beyond your control. Some incident may occur which will result to spillage, leakage, or pollution happening in the environment. How do we take necessary corrective action so that those kind of things do not recur? So that is why we do root cause analysis and then eliminate the problem altogether so that corrective action is effective. So these are all the specifics to environmental management system. Same way, we will look at what are all the things we need to be understanding for occupational health and safety management system. Here, first and foremost, I said along with the leadership, workers are playing a very important role. So that's why this standard is for the workers, by the workers, and of the workers. So when I say workers, right from cleaner in the organization to top management, the managing director, the CEO of the company, all are considered as workers. So that is the umbrella definition given in the ISO 45001. Worker means everybody who is in the organization, whether he is paid or unpaid, a student visiting the organization, anybody in the plant premises at any point of time is considered as worker. So they have to be involved. Very important for successful implementation of occupational health and safety management system. That's why consultation with the workers and their participation in the management system is stressed, and we have to show evidences how employees are participating in the deliberations so that our system is effective, implementation is done. Okay. Then under the planning to address risk and opportunities, what are all the hazards from our activities and what is the kind of risk to injury to employees? We need to assess them properly and then take the necessary control measures to mitigate those risks. So that's why hazards and risk is very specific to occupational health and safety management system. Overall, it is addressed in the clause 6 actions to address risk and opportunity. That is overall for the organization. But when it comes to occupational health and safety, what is the risk which is coming from hazards in the organization, in the workplace, which can give injury or illness? Both of them are important. Injury is immediately acute. You see a blood coming out, broken bones, that is injury. Illness may be not acute, it will be a chronic thing. When somebody is exposed to a noisy environment, over a period of time only the impact will be known. The hearing impairedness, immediately he will not see any problem. That's why we need to understand both injury and illness to the workers while working in the organization. We only talk about the occupational health and not the general health and well-being of the employees. When they are at work, they have to be protected. Okay. Then elimination of hazards and minimizing risk. So when you are going about doing the product and service, whatever you are doing, what are all the hazards you are encountering, and how are we going to eliminate them, and how do we minimize the risk to the employees? So this is also specifically addressed under 8.1. And then emergency response. Here also there can be a potential emergency or a real emergency happening. When the fire happens, there is environmental damage as well as property and life also in danger. People may get impacted. So that's why these emergency response, these drills have to be conducted like a fire drill or some evacuation drill or some other kind of explosion, some kind of scenarios we have to simulate and carry out the emergency drill and see the response of the employees and the system, so that we can correct our mistakes, so that when the real emergency comes, we are better prepared than ever. So that is why it is also included specifically for occupational health and safety management system. Then legal and other requirements like visa compliance obligation and environmental management system. Here we talk about legal and other requirements, maybe Factories Act or Labor Act or whatever related to occupational health and safety. Those things will be addressed. So when I say environment, it will be talking about pollution, pollution control board regulations, or Air Act, or any other hazardous waste management act. All those things will be applicable. Here we will be talking about labor laws, Factories Act, and those kind of things we have to look at in the legal requirements. Then comes incident investigation and corrective action. Again, when some incident happens, we have to investigate the incident so that we can take the root cause analysis and corrective action, so that the similar incidents can be avoided in future, so that we can prevent recurrence of these incidents in future. So these are all specific to 3 management systems, and common ones I have already given. So I think you got a understanding of these kind of things, how it works when you do integrating the 3 management systems. So now we look at the common elements again. Roles and responsibility. When you are employing people, you do not employ people specifically for doing quality and specifically for doing environmental. So a person, when he is trained, he knows what are all the risks from the job, what are all the environmental concerns. So he will be able to do integrated working, so that all these 3 systems or any other system which is integrated can be implemented effectively. So roles, responsibilities are common across organization. When you have a standard procedure which talks about safety, which talks about environment concerns, also quality, so operator or worker can easily follow and implement. So that's why roles and responsibility are more or less common across the organization, except for some specific designations like a safety officer or maybe a environmental scientist, which will be only one person or so. Rest of the employees will be kind of integrated roles and responsibilities will be there. Okay. Then risk and opportunity is also common. As I said, risk can be from any point of view. Risk of customer dissatisfaction will come from quality management system, risk of environmental pollution from EMS, and risk of injury or illness to the employee. So these are all risks. Same way, opportunity, how to improve the environmental performance by doing recycling. That is an opportunity. How do we capture new markets by getting new customers? That's again opportunity in quality management system. Same way, how do we improve the awareness of people about safety by conducting safety awareness campaigns, involving them? So we are also increasing the opportunity and improving the safety performance of the organization. So these are also common. Okay. Then objectives. As I said, when you have an integrated policy, all departments and the department staff have to have objectives to achieve what is given in the policy signed by the top management. So that's why objectives also can be integrated, and they are all common elements. Then supplier evaluation, as I mentioned earlier, quality point of view, you'll be doing a lot of evaluation because you want to get quality products from your suppliers so that you can add value and give it to customer. Also, we may have contractors, service providers working in the organization. So they also need to follow the safety system. Because of their mistake, your employees should not suffer. So they need to understand what are all the safety precautions to be taken. So that's why supplier evaluation from that point of view, from environmental point of view also, we need to see whether they are doing a lot of activities which are polluting the environment. So you will have an influence as a customer upon your suppliers to improve their environmental performance. Same way, when they are working in your plant or in your organization, they need to follow the safety practices which are established in the organization, so they do not create any incidents and accidents in the organization. That's why supplier evaluation is common to all the three standards. Okay, then competency and awareness, like whatever you do, you have to make them competent, safety point of view, environment point of view, as well as quality, how they are doing the product and service. So we have to train them and make them competent. So when they come, they may not have all the competencies, but we have got a very good training program where we can put them through and train them so that they improve their competencies. So this is also common across all the elements. Then communication processes, we have a common communication structure through which we can communicate all the three management system elements. So it can also be a common process. Then infrastructure and work environment, we can have a integrated infrastructure and work environment which is conducive to environment performance as well as safety performance, and then improving the potential of the employees. Like employee efficiency can be improved by having systems in place. So ultimately customer is going to be satisfied. So this is common which can be done. And then document information, last but not the least, document information, as I said, when you have an integrated procedure which talks about quality, safety and environment, it's easy to follow, there is no duplication. So you will ensure that if there is one procedure which is integrated, all will be following it because there is no other procedure in the department. So it will be easy for us to understand and apply this whatever is given in the procedure. So we get a complete performance improvement in across all the spheres. Then same way, audit also can be integrated because we have seen the structure is very similar. Auditors can be trained and they will be better aware of all the three standards or whatever standards you are implementing. So internal audits also can be integrated. Management review, because top management, as I said earlier, is only one top management for the organization. So whenever we conduct reviews, they can upfront have a look at all the performance of all the management systems and give their valuable advice, suggestions, so that it can be implemented. So one review can take care of all the standards which are integrated. Then feedback also, from customer feedback, from interested parties feedback, from employees also feedback. See, employees are very much interested party in occupational health and safety management system. Customers are interested party in quality management system. So who are the interested parties in environmental management system? The neighboring community, the people around the organization where they are living. So they need to have a good atmosphere, environment for them to sustain. So that's why we need to take their feedback and understand what way we can improve the environmental performance. Then compliance and legal requirements, irrespective of any standard, legal and other requirements are very important to comply, because if you violate the laws of the land, then naturally penalties and even closure of the company is also possible. So that's why not only for the management systems, you also need to follow the rules of the land for continued operations of the organization. So that is also very common to all the things. Then non-conformances, anything happening, any incidents, how do we learn from them and how do we correct ourselves, so that this also becomes a common element of the integrated management system. And across the board, we want to see improvement. ISO is looking for improvement and continual improvement, because that is the mantra. If you do not improve, you will not be relevant in the industry or in the business. So that's why for your own sake, we have to do improvement, not only in quality or customer satisfaction, across the different standards getting implemented: environmental performance, safety performance, reduction in incidents, reduction in accidents or zero accidents. These are the kinds we have to see safety improvements coming in the organization. So these are all the common elements. Now, how do we integrate them? So now we will go to the nuts and bolts of it. You see, I already told you there are specific elements of quality management system, like customer satisfaction, what are the customer requirements, communication with the customer, and supplier evaluation for products which being supplied or services being supplied by the external provider. These are all very specific to quality management system. So those things are all addressed in that. Okay, then comes environmental management system. We look at what are all the activities of the organization, how is it impacting the environment. So we need to assess them. How do we control our waste? How do we minimize our waste, reuse our waste, recycle our waste? All these things are waste control, and also aspects and impacts. And how do we manage environmental incidents? So that also should be addressed in the environmental management system processes. Then when it comes to occupational health and safety management system, there we'll be talking about what are all the hazards and risks coming from our various operations, activities, equipment, machinery, and other scenarios. When we handle a lot of chemicals, there may be dangers associated with that. So all those things we need to understand under occupational health and safety, as well as emergency response. When a real emergency happens, how do we respond? So for that, we have to create a lot of scenarios. So that's all addressed in the occupational health and safety. Then integrated management system, we'll talk about all the common elements we just saw recently. The internal audits, the documentation, the training, the competency, all those things are common across all the standards. Now, if you see, these three standards are tied together with the integrated management system by having all the common elements in the IMS and individual elements of the individual management system separately, and a thread, like it is tying up all the three management system and make a integrated management system. So this is how we implement. First, we need to understand what all common, we take them apart, and then we look at specific to the individual management system, and then make the documentation, training, procedure for that, so that we can integrate it. So that is how we go for integrated management system. IMS ties up the individual management systems with the common elements which we just saw at the end. Okay, so this is how we integrate. Now, looking at in a tabular format, I have put in the clauses 1 to 10, all the clauses, and then under these three standards, because we have taken only three, we can also add any standard like ISMS, ENMS also can be added, but then those specific ones need to be addressed. But most of them are having a similar structure, so it's easy to implement and integrate more than three. I have seen in my experience 5 standards being implemented in one organization, so it is not difficult. So now if you look at the scope, that is the first clause of all the standards. It is talking about specific to individual standards. So for example, quality management system, we talk about customer satisfaction. And then we have to give consistent products and services. Also, we have to fulfill applicable requirements. So these are the quality management system related. Environmental, again, pollution prevention, the 3 R's, I mean reduce, reuse, and recycle. So this is very important under EMS. Then compliance obligation is nothing but the legal requirements and other requirements organizations to comply. Under the occupational health and safety, our main scope should be prevention of injury and illness to the employees, okay, workers, elimination of hazards and minimizing risk. We have to eliminate hazards so that we can minimize the risk. We cannot make it zero, but as far as possible, we can go on reducing the risk to tolerable levels. Then legal and other requirements also we have to comply. So these are all the generic scope of individual management system standards. Now, when it comes to normative reference, that is the second clause. It is basically ISO 9000 is what is referred for the quality management system, because this is the terms and definitions given in this separate standard. For EMS and OHMS, there is no normative reference. So here only the beauty of the Annex SL high-level structure comes into place. Just because there is no information for this clause 2, they did not jump the information from class 3 and write it in class 2. So they left it empty. Like when you fill an application, there is a space given office use only. So you understand you should not write anything there. So you skip it and go to the next section. Same way, if there is no information, they have left it none, none, and they moved on to the next clause, which is terms and definition. Here again, ISO 9001 has got a separate standard, that is ISO 9000, which talks about all the terms and definitions. It's like a dictionary for ISO 9001. Whereas EMS and OHMS have got these terms and definitions integrated into the standard. In EMS, it is integrated to ISO 14001 standard. Under the class 3, there are around 30 definitions. Same way in occupational health and safety management system also, it is integrated into ISO 45001. So, and the class 3, you will see all those standards 3.1, 3.2, like the definitions are given in the standard itself. So there is no separate booklet required. It is all integrated. Coming to context of the organization, as an organization, we have to understand the internal, external issues. pertaining to quality, pertaining to customers, pertaining to other activities, whatever we are doing, because of which what is the environmental concerns and what are all the safety related, occupational health related issues. It is all being discussed. So it is very common across all the standards. Needs and expectations of interested parties, what the customer want, what the employee wants, what the neighboring community is looking for, their needs and their expectations, how we fulfill them. These are all to be addressed. Then we have a specific scope for the individual management systems, which we need to upfront clearly tell what all things will be applicable and what is not applicable, and we have to have a proper justification and document them. So that is the scope for the particular management system for that organization. Earlier there is a scope which is generic for the standard, whereas this scope under clause 4 is specific to the organization. That's why it is a mandatory document. We have to have it for all the management systems. Then the processes which we are putting in to integrate this and also have an effective implementation. We just saw how QMS processes, how EMS processes and OHMS processes are integrated to give the effective implementation. So these are all under the clause 4 is common. That's why I given across all the standards, it's common, it's merged. Then leadership and worker participation. Under this, you see the commitment, leadership commitment has to be there. If he signs a policy and the commitment is only signature is there and no other commitment, it will fail miserably. That's why they have to give the resources, they have to put the time and effort to see that whatever signature and commitment they have given, it is fulfilled in letter and spirit. So that is why commitment. And the integrated management system policy, incorporating all the elements of all the standards, we have to address them in the policy. And then roles and responsibility, the structure in the organization with a proper role, clarity and responsibility, accountability and authority has to be given by the top management, so that this entire management system integration goes smoothly and implementation is effective. Only under the worker participation, under occupational health and safety, consultation and participation workers, this is specific to OHMS. That's why it is kept separately in under that, and it is coded red. So that is only for ISO 45001 occupational health and safety management system. So now we have covered 5 clauses. Now let us move on to other clause. Clause 6, which is actions to address risk and opportunity. Here again, risk and opportunity management is common across the all the standards. What all opportunities we have to avail in respective management system, and also objectives, which we need to have a mandatory document. So the policy is also mandatory. The scope of the management system is mandatory, as well as the objectives for each management system. We have to have a either separately or integrated as a IMS objective. So that is why it is also mandatory, and that is covered across all the standards. So specific to quality management system, we talked about the planning of changes. Whenever organization implement any change for continued suitability of the management system, we have to communicate the changes properly throughout the chain, so everybody understands and implements it properly, so there is no surprises in the end. Then coming to EMS, what are specific under clause 6? The aspects and impacts, means what are all the organization's activities and what type of interaction with the environment, which we need to understand, assess, and then we have to mitigate the risk. How we mitigate the risk has to be planned. That's why aspects and impacts is coming under EMS. Same way for occupational and safety, hazards and risk from the activities, equipment, machinery, what type of hazards are available and what is the risk coming out of it to employee as an injury or ill health, and how do we mitigate them. So these are addressed under that particular clause. Then again 7, I told you 7 is common across. Resources are common, infrastructure and worker environment for the effective implementation of all the management system is also common. Competence of the employees, by giving proper training under each management system, there will be some training requirements which you have to fulfill. So the competency of the employee increases as he works along in the organization. Awareness about this management system, what is good, what is bad, both of them need to be made aware to the employees. Then ultimately documented information. Since there is more than one people working in the organization, there will always be inconsistency if there is no proper document. So that's why a documented information is always helpful to maintain consistency in whatever we do, in terms of safety performance, in terms of environmental performance, and also consistent quality of products, which is going to satisfy the customer. So that is why documented information is also common across all the standards. Now coming to operation, you see there are specifics for each standard. in operation, when we look at the product realization, we need to understand what the customer wants. So customer requirements are given and we have to review them, whether we can meet them or not, and we have to have a dialogue with them and keep all the records of what is finally agreed, and that's what we should be supplying to the customer. So that's why it's important. Design and development, wherever applicable in organizations, we have to have proper documentation of how we do the design, verification, validation, review of all those things have to be maintained. So that is specific to quality management system. External provision, that is with the suppliers, supplier evaluation, checking the quality of product being supplied, that is there. And also I already told you, the service providers coming into the plant, we need to look at their occupational health and safety management system point of view, but majority of the external provision is lying in the quality management system. Then product and service realization, that's where we are actually making the product. It will mainly talk about the quality and other specific functional requirements. Those things need to be addressed. Then how do we release the product from the organization, whether the product or service? So that also a competent authority has to approve the release of this. Then whenever we find any non-conforming output in our product or service, we have to control them. Only thing we need to do is control. So these are all specific to quality management system. We need to have procedures, instructions, and processes for this. Then coming to environmental management system, operational control with respect to how do we control our waste, how do we take care that waste leakage emissions are minimized in our operations. So that is what we call operation control. A single procedure can talk about operation control from environmental point of view as well as operation control from safety point of view. What type of safety precautions to be taken before we start the machine. So something like that. So it will address both environment as well as occupational health and safety. Then waste management. How do we manage our waste? We need to have instructions, processes in place. So we basically properly recycle and reduce, reuse, all those things we talked about. Then coming to occupational health and safety, again, how do we minimize the risk by eliminating hazards? So that should be the focus here. And then management of change. Whenever any change happens from the safety point of view, how do we educate the employees, train them so that the change is not having any negative impact on the occupational health and safety performance. So these are all very specific to operation related. Also, one thing I must add here, the emergency response means emergency preparedness and response, which is common for both EMS and OHMS. So that also need to be added here. Then comes performance evaluation. Under this clause, we again have monitoring measurement, whether it is for quality or whether it is for environment, also for occupational safety. By noise levels, we want to monitor, or gas levels in a particular environment, enclosed environment, we need to monitor because we have to protect employees before they enter the enclosed spaces. So these are all coming under the safety point of view. Quality of the product is coming under quality management system, and what are all the things we are emitting from the stack or released to water or land, we need to have some kind of monitoring on them. So that's why environmental point of view, there is some monitoring measurement involved, and all this data have to be analyzed and then evaluated. So that's why these are all common to all the standards. Internal audit, again common. We can have an integrated audit where we can look at all the three systems, whether it is effectively implemented or not, by giving training to auditors on all the three standards. And then management review, in a single review, management can take care of all the three systems and see how they are implemented effectively and what are all the resource requirements we can understand and allocate accordingly. Specific to standards, in quality management system, we look at customer satisfaction and we assess them and see how we can improve them, enhance them by doing that performance assessment. Then under EMS, we look at compliance obligation, means legal requirements. How are we complying? Have we identified all the legal requirements applicable to our organization, and how are we going about complying with them? Again, under OHMS also, we are looking at legal and other requirements specifically from employees' health and safety point of view. Then under improvement, common things are corrective action. When we saw earlier the PDCA cycle, when you do corrective action, you are eliminating your mistakes and you are doing root cause analysis so that the mistake doesn't recur again. So that is why the mistakes are getting lesser and lesser when you do proper corrective action. So that's why corrective action is also included in improvement. And continual improvement is essential for the organization's survival. So that's why that is common across all the standards. We have to look at what can I do better towards improving the safety, towards polluting the environment less and less, and also improving the customer satisfaction. So these are all common. So we have put it under continual improvement. So specific to EMS and OHMS is incident investigation. It can be environmental incident or accident or incident where employees are injured, and that is also can be considered as a incident for investigation. So we have to investigate the spillages, leakages, and accidental releases, and also any casualty during the incidents, and then we have to investigate them so that we understand the root cause, why it happened. We have to ask this question 5 times. So we go to the root cause of this problem and eliminate them permanently. So the next time similar incident doesn't occur. So that is why it is considered for EMS and OHMS. So this is how we can understand the individual elements and also the common elements. So we can separate them, and then we can make the process easy for integration. Okay, so this is what the benefits of IMS implementation will be. It enhances efficiency, because when you have a single system, earlier you had 3-4 manuals and things, it is really chaotic. But now we have got a singular documentation and one person who is collectively responsible. So it naturally enhances efficiency by reducing unnecessary duplication in communication. Supports routine activities, because we have got a same procedure which talks about quality, environment, and safety as an integrated work instruction. It is supporting our routine activities. That means when we are doing it, we are considering all the 3 management systems together. So it improves the efficiency. Facilitates addition of other standards and simplifies certification. That means if you have got 1 or 2 now, we may add 1 more standard later as we go along, as per your customer requirements, as per the industry requirements, you may be going for further certification. So that time it becomes easy for integration, because the structure is already available and it is conducive for integration. So that's why certification process also gets simplified. Then integration of the standards into business practices. This is very important. Facilitates integration of the standard into business practice. We do not do one for standard and one for the business purpose. Whatever management review is done, it is for the ISO as well as for the business improvement. That way it has to be integrated. We do not want to dual standards. We should have a single integrated standard where management review also happens, and that is towards aiming for business growth and prosperity. Because ISO itself is looking for continual improvement. So we have to keep it as a integrated business review. Then we also have effective single management system, which is easy for everyone, and then single documentation and manual, which is going to help smooth implementation and maintenance of the system. You see, implementation is easy, but then going on maintaining it, if it is a single system, it is going to be very easily managed by the organization and the people. So that is what is important. Main thing is optimizing resources and cost. Since you have a single system, audits will be reduced, the mandates will be reduced, so you'll be paying less for the certification bodies by reduced mandates, because you integrated many elements of the standard, so they don't have to audit again and again management review. So they also will go for lesser mandates, which is going to benefit the organization in terms of cost. And moreover, employees are also feeling happy because they have one audit and all the 3 management system or whatever systems they have will be addressed together, so they can focus on other activities after the audit. So this is a benefit. Okay, so now I complete my session regarding the how to integrate the integrated management systems. Now I am open for questions. Any questions from participants?
Does anyone has any questions? If yes, we can now ask the questions from Sitaraman sir.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Can all the management system be audited simultaneously?
Yes, sir. It can be audited, because once you start integrating, then you will have a single manual which will be there, which we call it integrated management system manual. So when you have a certification audit, you will be sending this documentation. So when the auditors are coming, they will have expertise in all the 3 management systems, so that when they go to an area, they can ask questions regarding the quality management system, as well as environment and occupational health and safety, or any other standard you may have implemented. So they can have an integrated audit, and naturally certification organization can decide whether they want to have a separate certificate or a common certificate. Also nowadays certification bodies are issuing as an integrated management system certification with whatever standards applicable in the organization. So it is up to the organization, but it is possible. Integrated audit is possible. That will reduce a lot of mandates, for the auditing organization as well as, the certification body.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I have one question as well.
Yes.
How audit will be conducted for this integrated management system if someone has, integrated 2 or 3 systems, management system standards? So how the audit will be conducted for this?
See, if when you start with, you may have implemented one, or some organizations simultaneously implement all the 3 standards and they integrate them. So it depends on the organization. If you already integrated, when you call for the certification audit, you will basically, tell about your entire scope of the management system and all the management systems in place. So when the auditors come in, they will be prepared for the, kind of audit. So they will also have the questions prepared accordingly. So they will be having questions on all the 3 management systems, and they will be evaluating the implementation on all aspects. So that's how it is done as an integrated audit.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Will the auditor accept integrated policy document during audit?
Yeah, especially, many organizations, we have seen integrated management system policies implemented. As long as the individual elements of the management system are addressed in the policy. For example, in a quality management point of view, there should be a commitment to customer satisfaction or commitment to continual improvement. These things should be important documentary requirements. So that should be addressed in the policy. Same way, environmental performance, continual improvement in environmental performance, and commitment to prevention of pollution and environmental conservation. So these are the key elements of ISO 14001. So like that, every standard has got under 5.2 the key elements of the policy, which are shall requirements. So that has to be included in the policy. So then you become integrated management system policy. As long as each and every individual standards requirements are fulfilled, auditor should not have any problem in accepting that policy. Otherwise, he
Okay,
may
thank
give
you
a
so much, sir.
specific non-conformance against a particular standard which is not fulfilled.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Hello, sir. I have a question.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
How many standards we can audit at a single time in the IMS certification?
There is no limit to, sir. As I said, from 2013 onwards, all the standards which are being released are having the high level structure as part of their standard. So it is easy to integrate. So if the organization can integrate more than 3 or 4 or 5 standards, as far as I know, I have seen organizations where 5 standards have been integrated: quality, environment, occupational health and safety, information security, as well as testing and calibration, that competency requirements. So all these 5 standards are integrated. Some have got energy management also integrated. So it's quite possible 5, 6, but the organizations are very few and far between. But it is possible to integrate, and you can go for certification, integrated certification. As long as you satisfy the requirements of the individual management systems, and there should not be any problem in going for certification.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions from any of the participants?
No, sir, no more question.
Okay, I guess we have no more questions from any of the participants. So we will now conclude this particular webinar. I thank you, Mr. Sitaraman, for this wonderful webinar today, which you have given on integrated management systems. The way you have shared your insights and knowledge on today's topic was really interesting. I hope that all the participants has been benefited by your expertise, knowledge, and wisdom, which was given and shared on the given topic today. I thank you for giving your valuable time and effort to make this webinar a successful one. I thank all the participants as well for being an integral part of this webinar. I hope to see you all again soon. I wish you all the best on behalf of TNV Academy for your future endeavors. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much to TNV Academy for giving me this opportunity, and hope the information, whatever is shared, is useful to one and all. Thank you.
I request all the participants to now leave the meeting, please.